Before we begin, tell me in the comments where are you watching from. I'd love to know how far our celestial stories reach. There are wounds that do not bleed. There are scars that cannot be seen. And there are loves so ancient, so woven into the fabric of existence itself, that even the gods cannot fully erase them. This is a story of such a love that defied death, transcended time, and endured through 200 lifetimes of forgetting and being forgotten. Her name, in this life, was Elara, but she had worn countless names before, names spoken in languages long extinct, names whispered by lips that had turned to dust millennia ago, names written in stars that had since burned out. Yet in every single existence, in every fragile human form she inhabited, one truth remained constant, though she could never remember it. She was a healer, and she was eternally, devastatingly incomplete. Elara lived in a small coastal town, where the sea met the sky in an endless embrace of blue and silver. She worked in a modest clinic, tending to the sick and the suffering with hands that seemed to carry an inexplicable warmth. Her patients often said they felt better the moment she touched them, as if her very presence was medicine. They called it a gift. She called it simply what she was meant to do. But there was something else about Elara, something she never spoke of, not even to herself in the quiet hours before dawn. She dreamed of things that had never happened. At least, not in this lifetime. She dreamed of falling through endless darkness, of wings torn and bleeding, of a name she could never quite hear when she woke. And always, there was a presence beside her in those dreams, a warmth, a voice that called to her across impossible distances, a love so profound it felt like dying and being born all at once. She would wake with tears on her face and a hollow ache in her chest, as if something essential had been carved out of her and lost to the wind. The dreams had grown stronger lately, more vivid, more insistent. Sometimes, when she was treating a patient, her hands would tremble, and for just a heartbeat, she would see something else entirely. Stone floors instead of tile, torchlight instead of fluorescent bulbs, robes instead of her white coat, and always, that same presence, that same unbearable absence. She told herself it was stress, overwork, the mind playing tricks. But deep in the marrow of her soul, in a place beyond thought or reason, she knew better. Something was coming. Someone was coming. And when they arrived, everything she thought she knew about herself would shatter like glass. It happened on a day that began like any other. Rain fell in soft curtains over the town, turning the world into watercolor. Elara stood at her clinic window, watching the drops race down the glass, when she felt it. A pull, sharp and sudden, as if an invisible thread tied around her heart had been tugged from somewhere far away. She gasped, pressing her hand to her chest, and in that moment, she saw him. He stood across the street, motionless in the rain. Tall and dark-haired, his coat soaked through, he simply stared at her with eyes that held the weight of centuries. Even from this distance, even through the distortion of rain and glass, Elara felt the impact of that gaze like a physical blow. Recognition flooded through her, though she had never seen this man before. Not in this life. Her legs carried her outside before her mind could catch up. The rain soaked her instantly, cold and cleansing, but she barely noticed. She walked toward him as if in a trance, and he toward her. And when they stood finally face to face in the middle of that empty street, the world seemed to hold its breath. "I have been looking for you," he said, and his voice was exactly the voice from her dreams. Rough with emotion, tender with recognition, breaking with 200 lifetimes of grief and searching. "I have been looking for you through every age, every era, every corner of this earth. Do you remember me, Elara? Do you remember anything at all?" She opened her mouth to say no, to say this was madness, that she had never seen him before. But what came out instead was a sob. Because looking into his eyes, she did remember. Not everything, not clearly, but something. Fragments. Echoes. The ghost of a feeling so immense it could not be contained in one human heart. "Who are you?" she whispered, though part of her already knew. "My name is Cassiel," he said, and reached out to touch her face with infinite gentleness. His fingers were warm despite the cold rain, and at their touch, something inside her cracked open. "And you are the healer who fell from grace to save my life. You are the angel who chose mortality to be with me. You are my soulmate, though you have been cursed to forget me in every life we have lived since." The word echoed through her. Angel. She wanted to laugh at the impossibility of it. But instead, she remembered. The memories came not all at once, but in waves, each one more devastating than the last. She remembered heaven. Not the heaven of paintings and poems, but the real thing. A realm of pure light and harmony, where she had served as a healer of souls, mending the broken and guiding the lost. She remembered the absolute peace of existing in perfect alignment with divine will, of being an instrument of grace. And she remembered the day she met Cassiel. He had been human then, a soldier dying on a battlefield, his body broken, his soul flickering like a candle in the wind. She had been sent to guide him to the other side, to ease his passage from life to whatever lay beyond. It was what she had done 1,000 times before. But when she touched him, when she looked into his eyes, something impossible happened. She fell in love. It was forbidden. Celestial beings were not meant to love individual souls with such particularity, such devastating specificity. Their love was supposed to be universal, impersonal, evenly distributed like sunlight. But what Ilara felt for Cassiel was nothing like sunlight. It was lightning. It was wildfire. It was the kind of love that songs were written about and wars were fought for, and it had no place in the ordered perfection of heaven. She made a choice in that moment. A choice that would echo through eternity. Instead of guiding him to the light, she gave him her own life force. She poured her celestial essence into his failing body, healing wounds that should have killed him, pulling him back from the brink of death. And in doing so, she broke the most sacred law of heaven. The price was exile, but it was worse than simple exile. The archangels, in their infinite mercy and their terrible justice, gave her a curse designed to be the ultimate punishment for her transgression. She would be allowed to live with Cassiel as a mortal, but at the moment of her death, all memory of him would be erased. She would be reincarnated again and again, destined to live full human lives, but never remembering the love that had made her fall. And Cassiel, as additional punishment for accepting her sacrifice, would remember everything. Every life, every meeting, every time he found her, and she looked at him with the eyes of a stranger. "I have found you in every lifetime," Cassiel told her, as they sat in her small apartment, the rain still falling outside. His hands held hers, as if she might disappear at any moment. "Sometimes you were a healer, like now. Sometimes a teacher, a mother, an artist. Once you were a queen. Once you were a beggar. It made no difference to me. I searched until I found you. And every time, I had to watch you learn to love me again from the beginning, knowing that the moment you died, it would all be erased, knowing I would have to start over. If this story is touching your heart, please leave a like and subscribe. It truly helps me keep creating stories filled with light, love, and hope." 200 lifetimes, Ilara breathed, and the weight of it was crushing. 200 times you've had to watch me die and forget you. 200 times I've counted as privilege, he said fiercely. Because even one moment with you, even if you don't remember me at first, even if I have to earn your love again from nothing, It is worth more than an eternity without you." She looked at him. This man who had carried the burden of their love alone for so long and felt her heart breaking and healing simultaneously. "How do you bear it? How do you keep going? Knowing that I'll forget again?" Something shifted in his expression. A flicker of hope, fragile as a butterfly's wing. "That's why this time is different, Alara. That's why I found you so early in this life. Why the dreams have been so strong. The curse is weakening. After 200 lifetimes, 200 cycles of death and rebirth, the divine punishment is finally losing its grip. You're starting to remember on your own. And if you can remember, if you can truly remember everything, then maybe, finally, the curse can be broken completely." The process of remembering was not easy or gentle. It came in fragments and flashes, triggered by the smallest things. The scent of rain would bring back memories of a life in ancient Rome, where she had been a physician and he a gladiator. The sound of church bells would unlock a lifetime in medieval France, where she had been a nun and he a knight who visited her convent seeking spiritual counsel, and they had loved each other in silence and sacred restraint. The taste of honey would summon a life in Egypt, where they had been married and happy until plague took her far too young. Each memory was a gift and a wound. She saw herself die over and over, saw the agony in Cassiel's eyes each time, saw him bury her and mourn her, and then, with relentless determination, begin searching for her again. She saw the years he spent alone, the decades sometimes, tracking down the signs and whispers that would lead him to her next incarnation. She saw his faith, unwavering despite everything, that their love was strong enough to survive even divine curse. But she also saw the beauty. She saw their first kiss in a garden in Persia, under stars that no longer existed. She saw them dancing in a ballroom in Vienna, her in silk and him in velvet, as if they were the only two people in the world. She saw quiet moments, ordinary moments, cooking meals together, reading by firelight, falling asleep in each other's arms while rain drummed on the roof. 200 lifetimes of ordinary miracles. "Why?" she asked him one night as they walked along the beach, the moon painting a silver path across the water. "Why do you think the curse is weakening now?" Cassiel was quiet for a long moment, and when he spoke, his voice carried the weight of hard-won wisdom. "I think because we have learned what we were meant to learn. The curse was not just punishment, Alara. It was also a test. A question posed to us by powers greater than we can comprehend. The question was this: is love stronger than memory? Can devotion survive when one half of the soul forgets? Can commitment endure when it must be renewed from nothing again and again?" And we answered, she whispered. "We answered every single time. I answered by never giving up, by searching through every age until I found you. And you answered by falling in love with me again and again, even without remembering. Your soul knew me even when your mind did not. That kind of love, Alara, that kind of recognition that exists deeper than thought or memory, that is what breaks curses. That is what moves the hearts of angels." Tears streamed down her face, salt water joining salt water as the ocean wind blew around them. "I remember now," she said. "Not everything, not all at once, but enough. I remember loving you in Rome and Paris and Cairo and London and 100 nameless villages. I remember dying in your arms and seeing your face be the last thing I saw. I remember Cassiel. I remember it all." He pulled her into his arms then, and his own tears fell into her hair. "I have waited so long to hear you say that. So long to have you truly know me again. But remembering was only the first step. Breaking the curse entirely required something more. It required a return to where it all began. It required facing the powers that had imposed the punishment in the first place. The way to heaven, Cassiel explained, was not through death, but through ascension. There were places on earth where the veil between realms grew thin, where mortals with sufficient will and purpose could cross over. One such place was a mountain monastery far to the east, perched on a peak so high it seemed to touch the sky itself. It would be a difficult journey, but it was their only chance. They prepared carefully, settling Alara's affairs, closing the clinic, saying goodbye to the small life she had built in this incarnation. It felt like dying in miniature, this process of letting go. But Cassiel was right. This life, however comfortable, was incomplete. She had been incomplete for 200 lifetimes. It was time to become whole. The journey took weeks. They traveled by train and bus and foot, climbing ever higher into mountains where the air grew thin and cold. At night, they would camp under stars that seemed close enough to touch, and Cassiel would tell her stories of their past lives, filling in the gaps in her memory. She learned that she had been a warrior once, fighting beside him in a revolution. She learned that they had once had children together, 3 beautiful souls who had lived full lives of their own. She learned that in some lifetimes, they had only found each other in old age, and had treasured their brief time together all the more for its brevity. "We have lived so many stories," she marveled one night, watching the aurora dance across the northern sky in ribbons of green and purple. "We have been so many people, and yet always the same," Cassiel said, his arm around her shoulders. "Always healer and soldier, always light and shadow, always you and me." When they finally reached the monastery, they were greeted by monks who seemed unsurprised by their arrival, as if travelers seeking heaven appeared on their doorstep every day. The head monk, an ancient man with eyes like still water, looked at them for a long moment before nodding. "The lovers curse to forget," he said softly. "Your story is known even here. The angels speak of you when they think mortals cannot hear. They call you the proof and the lesson." "We need to ascend," Alara said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. "We need to face those who cursed us and ask for the curse to be lifted." The monk smiled, sad and knowing. "The curse has already been lifted, child. It was lifted the moment you remembered of your own will, without dying first. What you seek now is not the breaking of the curse, but reconciliation. You wish to return home, to be forgiven." Alara felt the truth of his words settle into her bones. Yes, that was what she wanted. Not just to be free of the curse, but to be welcomed back. To have her choice, her great transgression, acknowledged not just as a crime, but as an act of love. To be seen, truly seen, by the divine powers she had once served. "Can we?" Cassiel asked quietly. "Can we be forgiven for loving each other?" The monk led them to a chamber at the very top of the monastery, a circular room with walls of glass that looked out over the entire world. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of gold and rose. In the center of the room was a pool of perfectly still water, reflecting the sky above. "This is a threshold," the monk explained. "Step into the water together, and if your hearts are true, if your love has been purified by suffering and time, the way will open. But know this, heaven will ask something of you. It always does. And you must be willing to give it, whatever it is." Alara and Cassiel looked at each other. 200 lifetimes looked back from behind their eyes. 200 times of meeting and loving and losing. 200 times of faith against all reason. "Together?" she asked. "Always together," he answered. They stepped into the pool hand in hand. The water was not cold or warm, but something else entirely. It was like stepping into pure sensation, pure being. Alara felt herself dissolving and reforming, felt the boundaries of her body become fluid and uncertain. And then, suddenly, they were elsewhere. Heaven was exactly as she remembered and nothing like she remembered. It was light, yes, but also music and mathematics, and emotion all woven together into something so beautiful it hurt to perceive. And standing before them, massive and glorious and terrible in their radiance, were the archangels. She recognized them. Michael with his sword of flame, Raphael with his staff of healing, Gabriel with his horn of truth, and others too, beings of such power that even looking at them was almost unbearable. These were the ones who had judged her. These were the ones who had cursed her love. "Ilara," Michael spoke, and his voice was thunder and whisper combined. "You have returned." She wanted to bow, to prostrate herself, but Cassiel's hand in hers kept her upright. "I have returned," she said, and was amazed that her voice did not shake. "And I have come to ask what I must do to truly come home." The archangels conferred among themselves in that language beyond language that she had once understood perfectly. Finally, Raphael stepped forward, and there was something almost tender in the gesture. "You broke the law of heaven out of love," Raphael said. "You chose one soul over your duty to all souls. For 200 lifetimes you have paid the price. But in paying it, you have also proven something we needed to understand. You have shown us that particular love, specific devotion, is not a betrayal of universal love, but an expression of it. You have taught us, who are ancient beyond time, something new about the nature of grace. Thank you for listening till the end. Share what moved you most in the comments, and don't forget to follow and subscribe. If you're new here, welcome to our family of celestial souls." Gabriel spoke next, his voice like silver bells. "The curse is already broken, as you have discovered. Your memories have returned. You stand here together, mortal and mortal, soul and soul. What remains is the question of what comes next. Do you wish to return to heaven, Ilara? To reclaim your wings and your place among us?" This was the moment she had journeyed so far to reach. This was the choice. And looking at Cassiel, seeing the question in his eyes, seeing the love that had endured through everything, she knew her answer. "I wish to choose," she said firmly. "Not as punishment or reward, but as free will. I wish to choose my path and my love without curse or blessing dictating the terms. Can you grant me that?" The archangels were silent for a long, eternal moment. Then slowly, Michael smiled. It was like watching the sun break through storm clouds. "That is all we ever wanted you to learn," he said. "That love is choice, that grace is freely given and freely received, that faith is not obedience but active participation in the divine. You have learned it well, Ilara. You have both learned it well." Raphael stepped forward and touched her forehead with one radiant finger. Immediately she felt it. Her wings, not growing back, but remembered, not restored, but acknowledged. She was still mortal, still human, still bound to earth and time and death, but she was also, simultaneously, what she had always been. Healer, angel, bridge between worlds. "Return to earth," Gabriel said. "Live your life with your chosen love. And when your mortal days are done, both of you will be welcomed here. Not as punishment or reward, but as souls who have completed their journey, who have learned what love truly means." Michael raised his flaming sword, not in threat, but in salute. "You are forgiven, Ilara. You were forgiven the moment you fell. We simply needed you to forgive yourself." They returned to the monastery pool gasping, as if they had been underwater for hours instead of moments. The monk helped them out, wrapped them in warm blankets, and offered them tea. He asked no questions about what they had seen or heard. Some things were too sacred for words. They stayed at the monastery for 3 days, recovering their strength, acclimatizing to the weight of being fully human again, after touching the divine. On the 4th day, they began their descent, walking back down the mountain hand in hand, talking about the life they would build together. A real life, a chosen life. Not stolen or cursed or borrowed, but freely given and freely accepted. Ilara would return to healing. That much was certain. It was what she was, in every form, in every lifetime. But now she would do it without the shadow of forgetting hanging over her. Now she would build a legacy that could last beyond one mortal span. And Cassiel, who had been a searcher for so long, would finally have a chance to simply be, to live, to love without the constant fear of loss, to grow old beside her instead of watching her die young, to build something lasting together. They returned to the coastal town where their reunion had begun. They bought a small house overlooking the sea, with windows that caught the morning light and a garden where roses grew wild. Ilara reopened her clinic, and word spread quickly of the healer whose touch seemed blessed. People came from far and wide seeking her help, and she gave it freely, knowing now the true source of her gift. Cassiel worked beside her, learning the art of healing for himself, no longer content to simply find her, but determined to share her purpose. Together, they built something beautiful, a place of restoration and hope, a threshold between suffering and peace. Years passed, then decades. They grew older together, their hair turning silver, their hands becoming lined with age, their bodies slowly wearing down in the way that mortal bodies must. But their love, their recognition of each other, never wavered. Every morning, waking beside him, Ilara felt the miracle of it. Remembering, being remembered, being known completely. On her deathbed, many years later, surrounded by the people whose lives she had touched, Cassiel held her hand and whispered, "I will see you soon." And she, looking at him with eyes that held the clarity of 200 lifetimes plus one, whispered back, "I know. I remember. I will always remember now." When she died, it was like stepping through a door she had been walking toward her entire life. And on the other side, in the place between heaven and earth where souls pause before moving forward, Cassiel was waiting, not searching, not grieving, just waiting with the patience of someone who knows the waiting is finally over. They ascended together this time, two souls so intertwined that even the angels could no longer tell where one ended and the other began. They took their place in heaven not as angels or mortals, but as something new entirely, as proof that love, true love, particular and devoted and chosen again and again across time and death and forgetting, was itself divine. And in the garden of heaven, where the flowers bloom eternal and the music never ceases, there is a statue. It shows two figures, hand in hand, mortal and mortal, angel and angel, healer and soldier, looking at each other with the recognition of souls who have found their home in each other. At the base, there is an inscription in letters of living light. She fell from grace to love him. He loved her through 200 lifetimes of forgetting. They proved that love is stronger than curse, deeper than memory, and eternal as the soul itself. And sometimes when the sun sets in just the right way, when the veil between worlds grows thin, people on earth look up and see two stars that shine a little brighter than the rest. Stars that have always been there, though they sometimes forget to look for them. Stars that remind us all that love, real love, never truly ends. It only transforms. It only becomes more of what it always was. Eternal. Chosen. Home.